for folks who may be watching this, whether they're in Red Bay or Sullivan or Hamilton or Vernon, why should they care about what is happening with Ukraine and Russia?
Well, this is, well, first of all, let me say that every day on the news, it's not unusual to hear about some area of the world where there's a bombing or where there's a country that's overtaken another country. But a lot of this is dealing with countries that have been in war for maybe for centuries. Especially we know how that happens in the Middle East. This is a situation where you have Ukraine, which gained its independence after the fall of the Soviet Union, was a free and independent nation. And here we have another country, Russia, that is coming in and claiming that it wants to overtake this sovereign country. And the question is, if Russia can do this to Ukraine, what is next? What is next for the other Soviet countries or former Soviet countries? And it just sends a bad signal to the free world that you have a nation like Russia that is overpowering a nation that is smaller and that has less capabilities, and said, we want this area. And so it should be very alarming. And also, too, I have found in Alabama, and I know that this happens in Mississippi as well, whether it be in East Mississippi or Western Alabama, there are a lot of people that have been involved with mission trips to Ukraine over the last 20, 30 years since it became under the Soviet influence and got its freedom. And also, I know in Alabama, and I would sure the case would be in Mississippi, that we have seen a lot of families that have been adopted children from Ukraine. And so I know there's been a lot of Alabamians, and like I said, I would be very shocked if it would be any different for Mississippi. So there's a strong connections between Alabama, Mississippi, and a lot of other states across America that have done adoptions and that have sent mission trips to Ukraine. And so there is really a close connection there. Again, Ukraine is a long way from Alabama and Mississippi, but it is something that, we understand that they were under the suppression of communism for so long when the Soviet Union and when Russia was controlling them. They got their freedom and have been free for the last 30 years. And now all of a sudden, Russia is rolling in the tanks. I have just gotten back from Lithuania, which is one of the former Soviet republics. It was the first one to break off from the former Soviet Union. And they are very nervous there. I was meeting with actually some of our troops, U.S. troops there. Lithuania, for those who may not be familiar, is only a few miles, or the capital, Vilnius, is only a few miles from the Belarusian border. And I was there with some of our troops about 8 miles from where the Russian troops were located, ready to roll into Ukraine. And we are supporting the Lithuanians because they're supporting the Ukrainians. And we're doing everything we can to give them back up, to let them know we have our back. I, along with my colleagues, were there to let them know that we're doing everything we can here in the United States to support them and to back them up. Now, of course, we don't have troops on the ground in Ukraine, and that's not the plan at this point, but there's a lot of things that we can do. I applaud the president for doing these economic sanctions against Russia. I only wished he had done them sooner, but he's got to make sure that he does everything possible to stand with Ukraine, because we cannot let someone like Vladimir Putin and the Russians believe that they can take over a free and independent country.
The president, in his announcement about the sanctions earlier this afternoon, said that the U.S.-Russia relations are ruptured.
Sure.
I would assume we haven't talked before. I'm 51. I'm assuming you're in the ballpark, maybe a little older, younger. I don't know, but you probably remember the Cold War. Are we heading back in that direction?
I think as of today, we are. I mean, what Russia has done, to be honest with you, a week ago, I thought that Vladimir Putin was posturing. I thought he was just trying to get attention. that he would not have the audacity to go into Ukraine, especially to kill innocent people just to take over their land. But that's what he's done. And I woke up this morning and saw that he had decided overnight to move in. And it's just a really sickening feeling to know that a country like Russia has just taken over another country because it believes it has a connection with them. And it's just, but Ukraine is is an independent nation and has been since the fall of the Soviet Union. They have had their own elections. I've had a chance to go over to Kyiv and actually was spoke at a prayer breakfast there about 6 years ago. There's a lot of believers over there that are very excited about having their freedom after the fall of the Soviet Union. But yet, of course, Russia is now wanting to come back in, and it's just really heartbreaking to see what is happening.
So in your opinion, the president, what he came out with today, is that enough for now? Or do you think there should be more in the way of sanctions at this stage?
Well, I think that we need to make sure. I don't know what all is at his disposal at this point. But I would, if I was advising the president, I would tell him that he needs to do everything possible to do economic sanctions, not only on the president, not only on Russia, but also on Putin. And I don't know what that will entail. I think his economic advisors can tell him what all he can do. We've really not gone to this length, I think, in recent history. But I think we will be investigating, and Congress will be looking into what we can do to put the maximum pressure upon Russia, because we cannot allow a country like Russia or any other country just move into another country and take over. And as I say, it set the precedent it sets for what it's going to be in the future. It will be a dark days in the future if this continues.
Congressman, I'll try to wrap this up as quickly as possible. I think whether it's President Biden, former President Trump, I think they both understood there was, among many voters, among many constituents, a wariness about our involvement in overseas wars. We came out of Afghanistan. I think the polling had indicated, basically we were kind of weary of that. Should there be concern that here we go again, we're going back into this, we're getting into another part of the world that, it's granted, you're right. I understand there are people who may have connections to Ukraine, but for the most part, it's not really in our backyard. What do you say to those folks?
Well, I would say that, I understand that and that's very much true. But, my mind goes back to World War II. And I think about the time of when Hitler was rolling into Poland and other parts of the world over in Europe. And, there was a sentiment that we should just sit back and not worry about when we saw the Jews being exterminated. And of course, most Americans didn't really know at the time what all was happening. But, if it's a situation where you have longtime rivalries between tribes and different factions of groups that are always longstanding, I think that's where we have to be very careful. And I would think Afghanistan would fall more in that category. But here you have a sovereign country that has a great relationship with the United States and all the other free countries around the world that is standing for freedom and want their freedom, but yet another country comes in and wants to take over, and I don't know what's next. So at this point, I know that we're not sending troops over there, and that's not the plan, but we've got to do everything that we can initially to put the maximum pressure on Vladimir Putin to make sure that he reconsiders and he knows that this was a bad mistake.
I do have to ask you this. Somebody somewhere is going to ask, why in the world are you over there in the first place? Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm assuming this was something that was pre-planned anyway with the Helsinki Commission, and then this blew up, right?
Yes, this is the annual meeting, and the Helsinki Commission is a organization that was started back in the 1970s that really tried to after the fall of, right before the fall of the Soviet Union, but trying to focus on a lot of these European countries to make sure that human rights and freedom were preserved. And there is an annual meeting that takes place in Austria, but we went into Lithuania right before, just got here into Austria yesterday. But we have been in Lithuania, as I say, meeting with American troops there. And we want to let them know that the U.S. stands with Lithuania and all those other countries that have broken off from the former Soviet Union, to let them know that they have friends here in the United States of America, and we want to do everything we can to support them.